Well, thank you and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Katya Spear. I'm the Managing Director of the Mayor's Innovation Project, or MIP. MIP is a 20-year-old nonpartisan peer learning network for mayors and senior city staff. We work through in-person and virtual opportunities. We work to bring city leaders together to learn from each other, to share their good ideas and implement practices to advance shared prosperity, environmental sustainability, and democratic governance in U.S. cities. So this session is intentionally aimed at local government leaders and partners. And we always set these up as Zoom meetings and not as webinars because we really want to invite you into the conversation. So we'll encourage you to come on camera, especially later when we head to Q&A, and really do invite your questions and to engage with the speakers at that time. We'll be recording today's session and we'll post the recording to our website and share it out with you afterwards. So to the mayors and city leaders on the call, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to focus on one of the key critical levers we have for resilient governance, and that's community partnership, right? We're meeting at a really critical juncture right now. Across the country, cities are navigating a really complex reality defined by two factors: increasingly high need of vulnerable residents and the persistent uncertainty of federal funding and municipal budgets. Simply put, the gap between what our residents need and what our public services can provide is growing wider every day, which is exactly why today's topic is so timely for me and for many of you on this call. We know faith-based organizations are often the original social safety net in our communities, not just places of worship. They're trusted, deep-rooted institutions. They're food pantries, emergency shelters, after-school providers, and mental health anchors. They possess an infrastructure of care that government can't provide on it. So the goal of this session is to explore innovative, actionable models for government to formally activate these faith community partners for the public good. The central task is determining the most effective strategies for the public sector to partner and leverage this incredible community asset. And so I'd like to dive in here, and I want to thank and welcome our speakers for this session. I'm going to give a very brief introduction and invite them to share more about them and their role. But to start off, Mayor Victoria Woodards has served as the 39th mayor of Tacoma, Washington since 2018. During her time as both mayor and council member, she's focused on advancing public engagement, affordable housing, and equitable access to public services and infrastructure. Mayor Woodards has been a very dear contributor to the Mayor's Innovation Project over the last few years, having served on our National Steering Committee and hosting our 2022 summer meeting in Tacoma, Washington, where we explored issues from missing middle housing to incorporating equity and infrastructure planning and phasing. Geoff Baxter is the CEO of Citylytics, where he leads initiatives that enable cities to measure and maximize the impact of voluntary and faith-based organizations, bringing data-driven insights to strengthen community partnerships. Baxter has more than 20 years' experience at the intersection of strategic leadership, civic engagement, and social innovation. Mayor Yemi Mobolade has served as the 42nd mayor of Colorado Springs since 2023. Mayor Yemi and his administration has focused on deeply engaging community, advancing small business development and entrepreneurship, and deepening collaborations with the city's faith community. Mayor Yemi is fairly new in his term and to the Mayor's Innovation Project. We actually reached out to speak with the city last year about its ambitious 1,000 Neighborhood Gatherings initiative, which aimed to meet residents where they're at to build connections and strengthen social engagement. And that connection led us to Thomas Thompson, who's also joining us today, who leads the Colorado Springs Mayor's Office of Community Affairs and serves as the senior advisor to the mayor with a focus on community activation. Prior to that role, Thompson led a 30-year career working with community organizations, including churches, nonprofits, and businesses. So we're very grateful to have you all here today. After we do some brief presentations, we're going to open it up for Q&A with everybody on the call here. But for now, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Woodards and Geoff Baxter to kick us off with a presentation about their work in Tacoma. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Katya. And I will be brief in my remarks because I really want to spend the time with Geoff being able to share the results of what you're going to be hearing today in terms of our faith audit. This whole process started when I was running for mayor, actually. Met someone who was talking about this faith audit, and I was really curious about what it was. And as I began to learn more, I thought we have to do this in Tacoma. Being a person of faith, and coming from a church where I was very active in community, I know the power and the influence that the faith community has in our city. And I wanted to make sure that we were leveraging that and that we were in partnership with our faith community. So, and you'll ask me, so we're here today, 8 years later. What happened? It took us 8 years to get it done. Well, there were a couple things that happened. One, uh, NEBA, or now Citylytics, went through several changes in getting better and better and better, not just including the services they offered, but the actual software and the program that produces the report that you're going to hear about. Obviously, we went through COVID and a lot of other things, but it is amazing that I believe, as a person of faith, things happen when they're supposed to. And so we kicked off our faith audit a little bit over a year, or just about a year ago, Geoff, right? And then went back out with the new platform that they have, and are excited to say that Tacoma is the first city to use this new platform that has been put together. And I guess what I just want to let everybody know is that what we learned about faith communities wasn't anything new. We all know the power of our faith communities and what they bring to our cities. What we did learn better is exactly who's doing it, and how to actually even connect our faith community in a better way so that they understand who's doing what in the community. It also offers us a better relationship with our faith community. And how can we support them in the work that they're doing that makes our city better, and in most cases takes care of those who are most vulnerable in our city? What we do know with cities today, there are not enough resources, whether that be human resources or fiscal resources. And we need partners, and we need to tap and engage in our faith community. I'm excited to say that we did. I want to be super clear that this is not the end point. This is setting the foundation for how my city will move forward in partnership with the faith community. But I'm just really excited to have Geoff here with us this morning, just to kind of show everyone what Tacoma collected, what Tacoma now knows. And I'll come back at the end to talk about how we might better use what we know to continue to engage with our faith community. So Geoff, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Victoria. Like Victoria said, we've been, over the last few years, just developing and really streamlining what we've had. It's a very simple process where we look to engage faith communities through a community survey, and that survey is to capture the activity that they're involved in. And it has a few benefits, but ultimately what we're trying to do is, one, bring faith communities to the table to raise the voice and the profile that they have, because these are organizations, individuals that want to meet needs within their cities, but quite often they work in isolation, or the work is not done in partnership with the other stakeholders within the city. And so one of the real values in being able to capture the data that we capture is to be able to say, well, listen, this is what's happening. Here's the value of what's happening. Here's who's benefiting from what's happening. And with all of that knowledge, we can start to be a lot more strategic in how we partner effectively to meet those needs that exist within our cities. Faith communities are filled with volunteers. They're filled with people who are passionate, because they're driven by their faith to meet needs that they see within their communities. And they come with rich assets, not just the human asset of people's time, but a number of buildings, a number of resources that can be utilized. And like I said, if that's done in isolation, it's still good work, but it's such better work when that's done in partnership and it's done with all of the stakeholders for the city. So I'm going to bring up a couple of slides just to walk you through the process of what we do, which should inform a little more about how that comes together, and how we make that happen. So I need to actually play it. So there's really five things that we want to do when we survey and collect data. The first is to celebrate the community achievements. Like I said, there's a lot of great work that's already happening in the communities that we're part of, but quite often it's unheard of or we don't know it unless we're part of a faith community or an organization that's delivering that piece of work. It's never profiled in a way that actually helps us to see everything that's going on and celebrate some of those great things that are happening. This is important for a couple of reasons. The first is that we want to encourage people to be involved. Where there's great work happening, when we share stories of great work, it inspires other people, it motivates other people to do similar things or to join in with the projects that are already happening. It gives them the motivation to see that actually these things can make a real difference in people's lives. And when those stories are shared effectively, it really allows people to come on board and to be part of something bigger than they maybe feel that they can be part of. It also helps us to understand collectively just how much is going on that we maybe don't see. I think that when there's statutory services are being delivered, when commission services are being delivered, they're on the radar. But when voluntary services are being delivered, sometimes they can be missed. So by bringing those together and highlighting those, showcasing those, we get a much more solid view of everything that's taken part in the city. Secondly, is identifying needs and finding solutions. So one of the things that we're capturing is the level of activity. What projects are happening? Where are they happening? How many people are involved? What's the staffing? What are the volunteers that are involved? And that gives us a really good understanding of the level of activity that's happening to meet the needs that have been identified within our communities. What it also does is it lets us to see where there are needs that are being unmet or undermet within our communities. We understand the level of activity that's being produced from all of these organizations. When we match that with the activity that is being delivered through services already existing, we can see where the gaps are, and we can also hear from those community members, from those volunteers, what some of the felt needs around these issues that exist are as well. That will help with signposting, it will help with developing effective partnerships, it will help with how we approach commissioning new services, and it will help with understanding where more investment is needed in order to build up and increase the good services that are being delivered that maybe we didn't understand that, you know, a little can go a long way when you've got volunteers. But if we don't know what those needs are, then we're not able to divert funds or put funds into the right areas in order to achieve that. The third thing is to build stronger connections. This is really important and critical to what we do, is data for the sake of data or to have a nice report is not why we do what we do. And I know that Mayor Woodards would say the same thing. We're not in this to produce a report to have some, you know, fancy numbers. We're in this because we want to build connections that are going to be effective in making our cities flourish, in making them better places to live, in making them places where those that are in need, there are services that exist that can meet those needs. And we understand where those are, and we can direct services to being there. When we bring people together to look at the report, to look at the data and the dashboard of what we've found, it starts a conversation that automatically leads to greater collaboration, because we're bringing people into a room who care about the city, who care about those that are in need in the city, with an understanding of this is what we're currently delivering. How can we do this together? How can we be better informed? How can we engage with each other? And that might be about sharing volunteer resources. It might be about sharing buildings for use within projects. It might be about fundraising together in order to deliver a specific project. But when we bring people together and they see what's happening, there's a natural collaboration that happens. People want to work in partnership, but like I've said, sometimes with faith communities, they can be quite siloed. And so this survey really helps just broker that initial stage of bringing people together in order to partner more effectively. And that leads to the next thing, which is creating an active community network. I've been involved in a number of cities worldwide where there are community networks that exist, voluntary networks that exist, but they're not necessarily active in finding live solutions to the issues that exist within our communities. What we do, and ideally what we do, is we run a survey, and the dashboard is live, which I'll show you in a minute. But we want to track what's happening. Once we've got the data, how do we do more? How can we be more effective? And the fact that we can update that data means we can see whether we are being more effective. We can see whether we're engaging with the people that we've identified with need. We can see the level of services that are being delivered, the number of hours that people are benefiting from those services. And it helps us to have something that's live and vibrant, and it isn't just a static report. And then finally, to launch new initiatives and secure funding. Once we've identified what's happening and where the gaps are, we obviously have an understanding of where there are new needs. And we can come together with these newly formed partnerships to say, well, how can we tackle this together? But the other great thing for faith groups is that because we've collected the data and we can demonstrate that in a certain way, it will help those groups to secure funding. Quite often, faith groups are not tailored for writing funding bids or for tendering for work, but the data that we collect will allow them, it will give them the information that they need to be more effective in securing funds. So to look at how it happens, just practically, as I said, a very simple survey that goes out to the faith networks. They're filling that in order to capture the data of what's being delivered, how many volunteers, how many staff, what buildings are used, where does activity happening, but also who's benefiting from those activity. When we've got that data, we then demonstrate that on a live dashboard, and this can be searched across any category. We look at the financial value of the human capital that's being delivered. We look at the beneficiary hours, the number of hours people are benefiting from each of the services, the voluntary hours. But really, we can capture this and use this data. You can dig down into any area. If you're interested specifically in homelessness, then you can look at exactly what's being delivered across homelessness for your city. If you're interested in children and young people services, you can dig into that. If you're interested in a particular people group, you can look at what services are being accessed by those groups. So having a live dashboard really gives us the ability to dig into the data across so many areas that are going to be helpful to understand exactly what's happening within the city in order to make informed decisions about how we can do more to be more effective. So just an example of how we do that. We break the survey down into 18 different service areas, and then we capture any others that sit outside of that. I'll share this afterwards so that people can see exactly, as we are tight on time, but you can see there anything from accommodation, chaplaincy, children and youth, enterprise education. We're looking at what are the level of service areas that are being delivered. We capture where they're happening, how many people are benefiting from each of those services, and how they're being accessed, the number of hours per week, but we also can break it down into the number of hours per day. And one of the things said earlier about working collaboratively, one of the things we quite often find is there'll be a service that's running, and there might be an identical service that is running within half a mile of this one, and they're running on the same days, but they're maybe both not running on a Tuesday and Thursday. So a very obvious example is if we've got similar services running, we can actually talk to each other and say, hey, why don't we run these every day of the week and spread the volunteering between the different organizations delivering them so that we can have a greater impact. And just that knowledge on simple things like that actually makes a huge difference to what happens on the ground and to how people can access those services. We then categorize that by the social issues that those services address. And again, this just helps us to capture the level of activity and the needs that we're meeting. This can be really vital in securing funding, whether that's federal, local funding, whether it's going to trust funds. It helps us to be very focused on, we know the level of activity within the social issues being addressed, but we can also dig down into the service areas that that's represented by. And then another area is to look at the beneficiaries. We break this down by who's accessing the service and what level are they accessing the services at. Again, this just helps us get an understanding of if we've set up a project in a particular area in order to, say, support vulnerable families or young mothers, we need to know, well, are vulnerable families and young mothers accessing that service? And we need to know that that service that we're funding is being delivered and hitting the targets that we want it to hit. And so again, this just helps us to understand that. And I think that I'll flip back to Victoria, but it'd be fair to say that for Tacoma, these are the kind of areas where we're now digging into greater detail to bring partnerships together that can make sure that we're targeting work through these partnerships in a way that's going to be effective for the long term. Victoria.
Thank you, Geoff, and thank you for sharing those slides. And we'll make sure, MIP probably already has it, but make sure that you all can have access to our dashboard. We are continuing to populate it. As I said, this is not the end, this is the foundation. And as more of our faith community finds out about it, they're like, how do I put my data in? And I also want to say one of the great things about this is that it also gives an opportunity for the church or for the organization themselves to leverage their opportunity to seek funding when they do. So it's a really great way to capture data, which is not something faith communities do because they're too busy doing the work, which is understandable. But it is a great way to give them an opportunity that takes maybe half an hour out of their day to complete the survey. So thank you and look forward to answering questions.
Thank you, Mayor Woodards. Thank you, Geoff, so much for sharing your work with us. And yes, I'll actually share out that link to the dashboard shortly here as we get started with the next presentation. Geoff, unless you have it at your fingertips, I can pull that up. We encourage questions for Mayor Woodards and Geoff, but ask that you just save them until our final presentation from Colorado Springs. You're also welcome to start queuing up questions in the chat, and I'll call on you as soon as we go to Q&A. I'm going to just pre-prompt you all that it's something that's coming up for me as y'all are talking, and I know this is part of the work in Colorado Springs too, is just, Mayor Woodards, you mentioned this work being a foundation and not a ceiling, right? This is the level, and I just love to hear more from you as we go to Q&A later about how you're thinking about kind of institutionalizing this and where you might be going next. But with that, right now I'd like to welcome and turn it over to Mayor Mobolade and Thomas Thompson to share about their work in Colorado Springs.
Well, hello, everyone. I was going to say good morning, but it might be good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Thank you so much for having me and Thomas on this call. And what I love about this is the opportunity to learn from other cities and embrace best practices. And that's what we do as mayors. So thank you, Mayor Woodard, and also Geoff, for sharing some of your ideas. We're a city that believes in the power of data to drive meaningful solutions, identify opportunities, and measure results, and pivot along the way, but I haven't considered using that with our faith community. So that's a great idea. So for me, I've been in office now 2.5 years. And before coming to office, I was a pastor in the city. I was a small business owner, an economic developer, and a community builder. So the reason why I talk about my background is when we talk about faith and community and government, this isn't a new intersection for me. It's a space I've lived in for years. Faith has shaped how I lead, I serve, my values, and really how I see people. For me, faith is not about pushing religion into public life. It's about bringing the timeless values of courage, empathy, and humility into the spaces where decisions are made. In the world of government, we deal with budget and policies and systems, but underneath all of it are people, human beings made in the image of God with hopes, fears, and stories. Faith reminds me that leadership is ultimately about service. Before my time in office, one of the movements and nonprofits that I helped co-found in Colorado Springs long before running for office was a city gospel movement called Cause I Love You, or COS I Love You. And really, Thomas on my team was part of this movement as well. He was a pastor at the time. And so Cause I Love You, so COS I Love You, it's a play on words. We're saying Cause I Love You, but we're also saying COS, which is a nickname for Colorado Springs. We're saying because COS, I love you, Colorado Springs, I love you, but because I love you, I serve, I give, and do other things to make our community better. So that's what Because I Love You is about. It started as a service gap to fill the needs of the city around homelessness, food insecurity, and under-resourced school. But underneath that mission was a greater vision to mobilize that we believe and still believe today is the most untapped resource of our city. And that is the people who go to church on Sunday with incredible gifts and talents, but they're not putting it to use for many of our city challenges. And the many of those people who want to help, but they don't know how to plug in. Underneath this movement too was a call to unity for our diverse faith communities to experience true unity, and to be also for these faith communities to be united to the greater city government and what's going on. For us, it's a difference between community and communitas, the Latin derivative of the word community. Communitas is community born out of love and born out of the feeling of love and belonging and unity that we want can only be born out of a shared mission. This is the same bond when people have when they go on a mission trip, or when our military service members are deployed. And Colorado Springs is a strong military community. You see people come back from deployment and they feel a bond. So Cause I Love You became a neutral table where churches, nonprofits, and civic leaders will come together, not to proselytize, but to serve. Today, that network unites close to about 100 churches and mobilize thousands of volunteers each year to serve across so many local projects. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we just had our annual leadership gathering, and then we followed that gathering with an annual City Serve Fall Day. I think there were 2,000 volunteers scattered over 100 locations throughout the city, serving, putting faith into action. And this movement, before mayor, my time as mayor now, has showed me something that is really important, that if we want to scale care in our city, we have to build relational infrastructure, not just physical infrastructure. And the lessons we've learned has taught us that the faith community is one of the most important partners to bring to the table. And the first partners we often looked to solve some of our city's toughest challenges. So this was the experience before becoming mayor. And now I've brought that same mindset into City Hall. So whether it's challenges as homelessness, housing shortages, mental health crisis, hunger, social disconnection, these are things government cannot solve alone. You see, many of the challenges we face as mayor are tri-sector challenges, meaning they span all three sectors, private, nonprofit, and government. And therefore, they require tri-sector solutions, all three sectors. So we don't just welcome our faith partners, we see them as an essential partner to city flourishing. And here's the thing, faith-based organizations deeply rooted in community, they have decades of experience with families and mentoring youth and supporting the vulnerable and fostering neighborhood cohesion. And when the city partners with these organizations, we are leveraging their existing networks of trust, care, and influence to address complex challenges more effectively. And so a few recent examples, I think I shared about what the Serve Day we just had and the leadership gathering, and Thomas will unpack some of these even more, but last year we had the 1,000 Neighborhood Gathering Initiative. We were trying to tackle social isolation and improve our community's mental well-being. So this was our call to residents to host block party type events, barbecues, porch meetups, conversation, anything to reconnect neighbors after years of disconnection. And our faith community, we asked them to step up because this is embedded in their DNA to love neighbor. And they took on 40% of those initiatives. And by the way, that initiative earned us the accolade of being the most neighborly city in the country, the #1 most neighborly city in the country. And then also recently, this happened 2 weeks ago at the leadership gathering. I asked them to step up to help raise money for our community's winter shelter needs to address homelessness. We needed about 800,000, and they came in. I asked them to come in at 100,000, and they did very quickly because of this established network. And I think a few years ago, this is the same group of churches that collectively raised $1.2 million for our local rescue mission expense. And because of this, and I'm going to hand it to Thomas here to fill in the blanks. But because of this is why when I became mayor in June of 2023, one of my first acts of leadership was to create the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. What is this office? It's new for our city, but this office serves as a liaison between the mayor and the mayor's office and the various community groups in our city, in Colorado Springs, including especially the faith community, and not just churches, but also the Jewish community, Muslim, and other faith-based group. In short, the goal of this office is to bring the mayor's office to the community and the community to the mayor's office. And so we want to make sure that this bridge and this line of communication and many of the things you've heard from the city of Tacoma in terms of building stronger connections, identifying needs and finding solutions, and even the new initiatives that we want to make sure we have a direct line to our faith community group. So these responsibilities were broken among 3 different people, and it's made a big difference. And Thompson has been one of those 3 leaders in my office that have served as a bridge to our faith community. He is at the center of our work with Faith Partnership. And I'm going to ask him to fill in some of the blanks of the things that I left out.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's been fun the last couple of years to really focus on the word proactive. And how can we be proactive to build those bridges with the faith community so that we are ready when a need arises? And Mayor mentioned a minute ago that a few years ago, there was 55 churches that responded to at the time, that mayor's call. There was a gathering of about 80 pastors that met with the mayor, and they asked him a simple question: what keeps you up at night? He said, homelessness keeps me up. And out of that, 55 churches, as Mayor mentioned, were able to raise $1.2 million to launch the city's first year-round low-barrier shelter. What I love about that story is the next year, those pastors gathered with the mayor again, and he opened his mouth and he said, I didn't know y'all were serious. But if you're serious, I got all other problems we can work on together. And so that was around the birthplace of the 'Cause I Love You movement that Mayor started, and that inviting churches to the table. And by the way, those churches have, over that last time, raised an additional $2.5 million in support for homelessness and neighborhood revitalization, things like that. And so Mayor mentioned the 1,000 neighborhood gatherings. It was an exciting opportunity. It was a response to the Surgeon General a few years ago saying that the greatest health crisis we're facing as a nation is isolation. That's a bold statement. And so we started getting to the proactive part of how do we address that? If the problem is isolation, how do we help a city do connection? And we knew that to do that, that would require the people in the city who know how to do connection, and that is our faith communities. And so the mayor got before them and said, we're going to do 1,000 of these gatherings. I want you to do half of them. And our church has stepped up, and probably about 40 of the 980 or so gatherings that we had, about 40% of them were our faith communities. And they reached out into the community. They did donuts on the driveway. They did planting parties, things like that. And we were able to see, like I said, over 900 gatherings, 55,000 participants, 10,000 new connections. What I really felt proud of that movement was that 96% of the people who participated said we felt more connected to our neighborhood. And these are the kind of upstream things. I know we tend to really think about sometimes our faith communities in terms of downstream or response, right? We have a need. Can you guys step up and meet it? But really beginning to be proactive with them. I actually had a pastor call me yesterday and said, hey, where in the city do you need our prayer? Where in the city do you need our help? And he happened to be in an area where we just closed a community center. And so we were able to have a conversation about that, and they're looking for ways that they can be involved and supportive as well. So it's really fun to see the practical ways. I'll just give one more example of churches stepping in practical responses. We have a lot of our churches that have started getting engaged in attainable and affordable housing, donating land. This is wild to me that a church says, instead of building a bigger building, we're going to give our land away and build housing. And we have a church right now up in the north part of our city that has donated an acre of land to build 77 units for senior adults. We have churches that are working with refugee support with us in the city. And then one fun thing is we have a church that's working with a group in the southeast part of our city to help pull gang members together and reduce gang violence. And what's fun is since they started that about a year and a half ago, there's been no gang-related shootings and deaths in that area where they've been working, where that had been a really kind of violent area. So that's that kind of proactive work combined with the responsive work that's really fun to partner with some of our cities. So there's just a few thoughts I wanted to share, and I'll toss it back to Mayor.
Yeah. In the interest of time, thank you, Thomas. In the interest of time, I'm gonna hand it back to Katya, and let's take those questions. But I also want to honor Mayor Woodard and her leadership with the National League of Cities and helping to bring cities together and ensure that we have the tools to be able to do our work. So yeah, we're happy to take questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Thomas. There's so much to dig into here, and I hope this work is resonating with the folks on the call. We're going to head to Q&A now, and we're a small enough group. I encourage you to just come. Well, I encourage you to come on camera if you can and you feel comfortable doing so. And I invite you to either raise your hand in real life or with the hand raising feature and just come off mute and ask your question. As you think about yours, I'm going to kick us off here just to ask the two teams here, and I'll let you popcorn however you prefer, but just to talk very briefly about how you've overcome some potential challenges and concerns from faith communities or from others about partnering with local governments. Are there things that you've heard or that you heard when you started out that have either been non-issues or that you've had to kind of work through?
I'm happy to. Is this question open to all?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, for us, and I'll let Thomas weigh in. For us, there's been not a whole lot of issues. One of the most surprising things that we found out that is there's a hunger from our faith communities to step in and to be a part of the solution. This is their community. This is their city. A lot of the ethos around the invitation of what I'm asking of them is embedded in faith. Faith at its finest is loving God, loving neighbor, and pursuing the flourishing of our city. I think if anything, the challenge is the bridge. What are the systems, the spaces, the gathering spaces to include them? I'd say as for us as mayors, and I know Mayor Woodard probably understands it. I think one of our biggest gifts is and abilities and superpower available to us is our bully pulpit. It's amazing when instead of waiting for the community, I think we take the lead. When you say show up, they show up. Most recently, I started a pastoral alliance group, and it's a group of about 8 to 10 African American pastors that I've welcomed to the table and to start having conversations about how they can step up in our community. And it's amazing how easy it is. They show up. So there's a hunger for it. It's just it's up to us in the city side of things to take the lead, and they will show up.
Yeah. Since you referenced, I'll follow up. I think the key thing that I've seen in the city over the last decade has been the posture of the church. When the church shows up and says, "What would you have us do?" That is a different question than the church showing up saying, "We have some ideas," or "We need this," or "We want this." And it really goes back to the Gospels of Jesus showing up and saying, "What would you have me do?" And so when they ask questions like, "What keeps you up at night?" that seems to disarm a lot, because now they're trying to meet the need that the city is raising or the school is raising. And so a great example is Mayor pulled together some of our downtown churches recently, and we started talking about what are you seeing as a need? And of course, a lot of them addressed homelessness and that challenge. And that led to a thing called the Clean and Safe program, which the city, in partnership with some other entities, are having ambassadors who are walking around with vests that say, ambassador here to help. And they're just walking around downtown connecting with people, visitors, our homeless community. And those churches who came to the table and said, what would you have us do? They're providing the volunteers. So they're the ones saying, we got the people, you train us and we'll serve this way. So I think that posture, instead of sometimes churches saying, well, here's the idea that we want to do, when they're showing up and asking, how can we help? That shifts the narrative. And I've seen a lot of the walls go down just because people realize you're here to help us and not just forward your agenda.
And Katya, I would just quickly add, and Mayor Yemi, thank you so much for your acknowledgement. I just today have learned so much already, and with only a few days, not a few days, but less than 3 months left, I'm trying to figure out how quickly I can get 1,000 meetings done. But but really, I think I wouldn't necessarily call challenges, but some aha moments. One was even just with our staff, being able to see the power of the faith community, right? Not everybody is a person of faith. And so if you haven't worked in the faith community, sometimes you don't really understand the power of the faith community and how people are called to do this work. And so I think one of the ahas was for our staff, like, we've got some people we can really partner with. I think the other aha was actually for churches. Sometimes they are so busy doing their own work with their head down that they don't have time to learn what other churches are doing. They're just trying to provide the service. And it's not that they're being closed off. It's just that they're too busy doing the work. And so the ability to see what other churches were doing, and also the opportunity to learn. So some churches have talked about wanting to have a feeding program or wanting to do something around homelessness, but haven't quite figured out how to engage. Well, now they've got the city as a partner, but more than that, they've got other faith communities as a partner. And so I think some of those ahas have been really important for our community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. I want to go to your questions now. Justin from Madison, Wisconsin, do you want to just hop off and ask your question live? I can also read it if you prefer.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate this space. Yeah, the question, I'll read it. I have it targeted to Geoff, Citylytics. Have you had experience connecting your work with mayors and leaders who do not themselves bring a faith-based perspective? Because it's, easy for me from my faith-based, perspective, informing my work to see how the mayors that have spoken, are fluent in and comfortable to engage in this way from their government leadership position. But I'm in a city where that isn't the case of our kind of current mayor, and many cities, do not have a faith-based leader necessarily. And yet, how is that working? Do you have vision to make this sort of available, marketable to other city leaders? Do you have experience working with other city leaders? I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, we do have experience quite extensively of working in cities where the leadership is not of faith. What I would put that in context, we're a global organization. We're quite new to the USA, and so Tacoma was the first iteration there. But our work in the UK and Europe and Australia, I would say that 80% is for leadership that are not leaders of faith themselves. But what we are doing is helping them to understand the value of those faith communities. Sometimes we'll be commissioned to run the survey and dashboard across all voluntary services, but even within that, we would categorize those that are faith groups within that, so that we can still go through the same process of understanding the value of the faith communities within that. We've found that also that the flip side is we've been commissioned by faith groups and faith networks to come into a city so that they can measure the value of their contribution in order to take to the city leadership, which is another interesting dynamic. It's kind of like commissioned by the city leader is one thing where we're channeling into understanding from their perspective, what's happening within my city, how can I help collaboration? But it's interesting that faith groups themselves want to understand their value in order to take that to the city leadership as well. But we haven't found any major challenges with that because it's still about the contribution in terms of meeting identified needs within the areas of work. Our biggest challenge is probably around culture and language, of working with faith groups in order to come to a table, speaking the right language and understanding why it's important to engage across the city and being able to measure their impact in a way that they're not used to. A lot of faith groups will talk about stories, whereas what really we're talking about value. And a lot of faith groups that we've worked with don't necessarily like the idea of putting a dollar value on what they're doing. But we are trying to also work with them to say the reason that that's important is so that when you're at the table, when we're having these conversations, we can talk about it and everyone's on the same level, everyone's understanding why the data is useful within the same context. So I hope that answers it. The answer is yes, but we'd love to do more in the US.
Can I add just a kind of more color to that? When Justin, that's a great question. Before I got into office, I was with Cuz I Love You, and the mayor at the time, it was a person of faith, but he was very quiet about his faith. And he in all honesty, when we reached out to him, he had a lot of reservations. You could see by the time he came to that first leadership meeting, the walls were coming down. He didn't trust the faith group. He didn't know, he thought it was all about proselytizing and he had the walls up. So he was shocked how well it went. We have a governor who's not a person of faith and has been the biggest champion in the entire state about the Yes in God's Backyard movement, because he understands the power of what the examples Thomas shared when churches are donating land for housing. So I think for the leaders who are not there yet, their reservation hesitation might be the parts of the faith that are the more negative part of that comes unfortunately with religion, and especially around proselytizing. They don't want that. But if they know it's about meeting our community's challenges, they're all in. Which mayor or governor doesn't want, if someone says, hey, let me help you, here's money, here's resources, here's volunteers. I think if a leader pushes back, I'd wonder if they were the right leader. So I would say there's an opportunity for those faith groups to, maybe it's leading upwards, maybe it's not led by the mayor or the governor themselves or the city leader. When we did this, I was not in office. I'm a first-time political newcomer, but we led upwards to say, hey, we want to help you, and here's how we want to help. And the mayor then gave us a chance. So I would put the ownership on the faith group to say, make a case. You can always get a meeting with the mayor and a city leader, make a case and sit with them and tell them exactly what you're trying to bring to the table. And I guarantee you that mayor, city leader, governor, or county commissioner would say, hell yeah, let's make this happen.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's such a critical piece. Both communities have spoken recently, right, about how those different ways to demonstrate impact and how important it is, not just so you can maximize that impact, because there is a lot of need for support, but also to help build those impactful collaborations and to make the case. I think that was one of the things that caught my attention from how some of these examples differed significantly from past examples I'd seen. And in that, like, as you mentioned, Geoff, a lot of faith communities or faith-based, community-based organizations don't have that kind of data at their fingertips to demonstrate their impact, right? Yeah. Excellent. There's a follow-up here, and Mayor Woodards, I'll go to you next. Just a follow-up in the chat here, Geoff, mostly for you about how to kind of get involved, and I'll maybe save that for a little bit. I'll go to Mayor Woodards, and then I'll invite you to come back on, Geoff.
Justin, also want to say the faith community is no different than the LGBTQIA plus community, than the African American community, than the PTA, right? It's another section of our community. So I think getting away from it necessarily being about someone who has to understand faith, but just making sure that as you engage others in your community, this is just another group of active people in your community that you should engage, might be another way to address it. Making them part of the list when you're making a long list of who to engage, adding them to that list. And Katia, kind of the follow-up question, are you talking about Justin's follow-up question about how to engage? I was going to wait till the end, but I'll share it now. We are really excited, and Geoff said I could announce it. So Geoff, thank you for letting me share the good news. The faith audit is inexpensive in my view, but what's going to make it even more affordable is that Citylytics has just gotten a grant that will pay 50% of the cost of a faith audit for any community. And Citylytics is starting to offer that for the first time to cities that belong to the Mayor's Innovation Project. So Katia, that is not, I'd love to take it to the National League of Cities, and maybe we can do that next, but we are starting right here because the Mayor's Innovation Project is something that deeply touches cities in a direct way. And so, Justin, just if you want to reach out to Geoff to get all the particulars, or anybody else on the call today, know that there's a 50% match that you don't even have to come up with.
That's awesome. Thank you, both Mayor Woodards and Geoff and Citylytics, and thanks for sharing that, Mayor Woodards. Awesome. We'll provide a lot more information on that in the follow-up. Ben, did you have a question from Everett?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. I have a question specifically, Mayor Woodards, about Tacoma. I kind of heard about Colorado Springs. How does this, not just this data and information that's been compiled, but the potential for this, how does this interface with your city staff and different departments? Do you have like a champion in the city of Tacoma that kind of disseminates this into the great work that's happening in Tacoma with homelessness, and additionally other programs or needs with PD or things like that? How does all of this work into and interrelate with your city?
So Ben, we've just formally completed kind of the first real phase of our faith audit. And so, but right now it's living in our Human Services Department. They are taking the lead on sharing it and disseminating it. It's also living there because right now that's where we see some of our greatest need in being able to partner in the community. So we passed ordinance some years ago about homeless shelters and allowing churches to be a part and participate, not just in helping to provide shelter and supported services, but actually providing funding to do that work. And so, but the rule was there had to be one in every sector before we stood up another one, because we wanted to make sure that it was being evenly distributed around the city. Well, there were some places we couldn't find churches to do that. We couldn't find faith community organizations to do that. Now we know where some are. We know who's doing that work. So that's just a real life example of how we're going to use it. As we continue to get more information and to engage more communities, I think that there are ways that our police department's going to be able to use the information. And again, there's also going to be a way that one of the things that excites me the most is the way that our churches can use it. Geoff gave the example, if everybody's doing a feeding program on Monday, nobody's doing it on Tuesday. Now is this realization, oh, how can we make sure that there's feeding programs every day of the week? And so that's how we're looking at implementing it here. Yes, and Ben, thank you for being right here in the same state with me.
Thanks, Ben. Other questions from folks in the room? Michelle from Clarksville. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. My question to you is, first of all, I think this is amazing work that you are all doing in your communities. Here in Clarksville, Tennessee, we rely, I'm sorry, let me back up. So I lead the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services for the city of Clarksville. And we receive the HUD entitlement funds for our community. And so we activate those through work in our nonprofits, through our faith-based organizations for affordable housing and homelessness, to address homelessness. But the need is so large in our community, and we are often working with those nonprofits to do that work. And so many of them, I would say at least 90% of our nonprofits here in our community are faith-based organizations. And we say thank you to them all of the time, right? We're always pulling them together and trying to work with them to collaborate on efforts. And that thank you, I think, just doesn't go as far as it should. And I love the idea of having that data to back that gratitude and that impact in the community. And not only, how it affects us at the city level, but those constituents in our community, I guarantee you, they do not realize that impact that those faith-based organizations do it. They do it because they're called to do it, not because they want the recognition for it. So often, I think, we do the work here internally, quietly, to do it, but we don't tell the story well enough to our constituents to let them know the work that's being done. So I love having that tangible data that you can express that and build that awareness. Just as I'm sitting here thinking, I think about how our faith-based institutions not only help us with addressing homelessness and creating affordable housing, but we also have a military installation here. Fort Campbell is, here in our community, and, they're preparing, as they prepare for large events, they are activating our faith-based, our pastors to, in the event, they're working closely with chaplains. So in the event we have a large deployment or something else, that they can activate that faith-based community to help those families that are, still here. And so I love the fact that you're here, and I'm taking away so many notes, and I'd love to see more about Tacoma. I want to investigate that a little bit more, but thank you for all the information, the ideas on how we can communicate this in our community, in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Michelle. Our department's also called Neighborhood and Community Services, so we've got the same department name.
Awesome. CNCS. So do people missay it all of the time?
We say NCS, so we took the C, we're just NCS.
Okay, nice.
Thank you, Michelle. An interesting point of connection. I think your community and Colorado Springs and Tacoma all have like military bases in or very in closely in proximity. Interesting relation. And I know, Mayor Yemi, I think your neighborhood Office of Neighborhood Affairs also originally had like a military liaison component to it too. Right. I know we're at time. I want to respect everybody's time here. And I know you all, I'm sure, have more things to do. So please join me in thanking our speakers today and for their thoughtful work to build meaningful partnerships and collaboration to engage faith communities. I really, really deeply appreciate your time today. And Mayor Woodards, I hope you are enjoying your last 78 days here. We will miss you dearly, and I hope you are not a stranger after that time. I will follow up with all of you, sharing resources, the recording, some links for you to all to follow up. And thank you, Geoff and Citylytics. We're really excited about the partnership and the opportunity for MIP cities to work with you and to learn from you. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, Katia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
all. God bless you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.